What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. As always, I want to remind you guys that if you want to donate to this channel, if you want to show love to this channel, if you choose to, you can do so in the links provided in the description box below. Now, I'm going to talk about something that Dennis Rodman said today on ESPN First Take. And this is something that's been talked about probably way too goddamn much. And I hesitated in talking about this because I would just be repeating myself. But fuck it. It's a trending topic. People keep talking about the same shit. So I'll just talk about the same shit again. He was asked who would win in a hypothetical matchup between the Chicago Bulls, his Chicago Bulls, the late 90s Chicago Bulls, and the current Golden State Warriors. And I believe he's talking about, they were asking him the 2019 version of the Warriors, I'm assuming. And Dennis Rodman believed that the Chicago Bulls would easily win. Now, I'm not of the opinion that it would be a cakewalk like some people think. But I definitely think that if they were playing in the rules of the 1990s, the Chicago Bulls would definitely have an advantage in that situation. Dennis Rodman said something to me that was quite interesting and sometimes even comes through my mind often. And he believes that the early 1990s, especially the 1991 Golden State Warriors, could compete against the 2019 Warriors. And offensively, at least, they could, because you had on that team a prime Tim Hardaway, who at that time was possibly the most explosive point guard in the NBA. They didn't say the best. I said the most explosive. And he had, at the time, the best crossover in the NBA. Probably the second best crossover ever, behind Allen Iverson. Then you had Mitch Richmond, who would ultimately go on to be seen as maybe the second best shooting guard in the NBA in the 1990s overall, behind Michael Jordan. And then you had Chris Mullin, who probably at that time was the one or two best shooters in the NBA, behind, or even equal to, probably the only guy competing with him in that department at that time probably be Drazen Petrovic. Well, at that time, Drazen was still not quite Drazen. Matter of fact, in 91, I don't even know if he was still, I think he might have still been with Portland at that time. So Chris Mullin was probably the best shooter in the NBA at that time. There's a team that's averaging like close to 120 points per game. So, I mean, who knows? But he also said that there's really no debate between the GOAT argument. He said he thought LeBron James is a top 3-5 player. I think LeBron James right now is somewhere around a top 10 all-time player. I've had him just outside of my top 10, and I mean literally just outside of my top 10. If the Lakers are able to win a championship next year and LeBron James shines and have a statistically dominant season, then I push him right back into my top 10. Okay? But he feels that there's really no argument as far as the GOAT is concerned. He thinks it's Michael Jordan. He said that Michael Jordan, I remember him saying this, Dennis Rodman, in his Hall of Fame speech back in, I think it was 2012. He said that he thought, or was it 2010? Can't remember which year it was that he had his Hall of Fame speech. Might have been 2011 or 2012, 1 or 2 years. But anyway, he said that he thought for a long time that the best 1-2 tandem in his mind was Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas, but ultimately he changed his mind and thought it was Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. He still feels that way. He thinks that Michael Jordan in today's NBA would average 50 points per game. Now, I remember this figure has been cited consistently for the last 10 years. I've even said this in various videos in the past. I think that Michael Jordan, if given the green light that some of these other guys have gotten over the various years, Kobe Bryant in 2006, but that was a situation where he had to shoot the ball that much in order for his team to win. Let me say this again, too. I had a debate with someone, and I said, I think it was Jay Monikowski. He threatened to point his finger in my face like Nixon did Khrushchev in the kitchen debate in '59. But he said he was going to point his finger in my face because I was an idiot, because I said that I don't think that LeBron James could have led that team to the playoffs the way Kobe did. And he gave me a standard argument that LeBron makes his teammates better. Now notice this too, guys. People always, I'm talking about LeBron Tars now. You can be a fan of LeBron James. That's great. But LeBron Tars have this tendency to contradict themselves consistently, even within an argument. They'll say that LeBron James makes everybody around him better. But yet, this is the same player, right, who, since 2010, and shout out to the subscriber that gave me this amazing statistic. This is the same player since 2010 whose teams have been involved in at least 43 trades since 2010. Since 2010. But this is the guy who makes everybody around him better, but yet his fan base constantly says, well, he needs more help, which is probably what they're going to say next year about Anthony Davis, or about LeBron James, if Anthony Davis doesn't put up 40 and 20 every night, that still somehow LeBron James needs more help. Funny how the guy who makes players better around him than anybody else in the world constantly needs more help. Whereas Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, I might have said them already. These guys played with what they had. Maybe they made suggestions for minor trades here or there, but you didn't hear them complain about the squads they had on their team, their squads that they had consistently as this guy. Yeah, Kobe Bryant complained about his team, but look at the team he had in 2006, and going back to my point. The reason why I don't think LeBron James could have took that team to the playoffs is because of the fact that LeBron James needs a particular type of guys or team around him to be successful. He needs spot-up shooters. He needs guys who can cut, right? And he needs, especially what I noticed is he needs a stretch four. Going all the way back to Cleveland, he had Donnell Marshall on his team. So Donnell Marshall was probably the original stretch four he ever played with. And ever since then, he's always needed a stretch four to make up for his lack of outside shooting in particular. You weren't going to have that with that team. They would need somebody who was a primary scorer, a guy who was going to score consistently throughout the game, especially in scoring droughts for that team. And they had a lot of scoring droughts. And someone who could be a closer for that team in certain situations. In a lot of situations for that year for the Lakers, because that team just lacked talent. It's probably the least talented overall roster in the history of the Lakers organization, the 2005-2006 season. Kobe Bryant was able to do something that we'd never seen before. He had a historic season, and I still believe that Steve Nash should not have won the MVP in 2005-2006, and it should have been Kobe being Bryant. Even though I was considered a hater back then of Kobe Bryant, I was definitely a believer that Kobe Bryant should have won the MVP in 2005-2006. If not Kobe, possibly LeBron James. But it should not have been Steve Nash that second time around. But that's what the Lakers needed. LeBron doesn't deliver that. And he wouldn't have had the pieces that he needed to be successful with that team. That's why I think at most the Lakers team would have won 35 games with LeBron James in that role. But yeah, in today's NBA, Michael Jordan, I believe, would probably average something close to 50 points per game, especially with the way that I see teams play defense. He mastered playing off the ball. So double teams wouldn't work on him the same way they work on Leonard. You know, Michael, I'm not saying he's Kevin Durant, but Michael had more range. Michael had more spots on the floor where he could shoot and shoot from a high percentage than Kawhi Leonard. And he was more explosive than Kawhi Leonard. He was faster than Kawhi Leonard. He was a better finisher on the basket. He was better at virtually everything than Kawhi Leonard. And the way the defenses are now, the way that the lanes are wide open, the centers are all to the fucking three-point line now. Michael was able to do what he did in his era when centers primarily stayed clogging the lanes up. And he was still able to average, during that second run, 28.7 points per game to 30.4 points per game during that second title run. This is when scoring was going down in the NBA every year. The 96 Bulls averaged 105 points per game. The 97 Bulls averaged 103 points per game. The 98 Bulls averaged only 96 to 97 points per game. That was a dramatic scoring drop-off. During the 98 finals, the Chicago Bulls only averaged 88 points per game, but still won that series 4-2. Whereas just last year, well, 2 years ago now that the season's over with, the Cleveland Cavaliers averaged 115 points per game in a series where they were swept by the Golden State Warriors. So that tells you the difference in scoring. So if Michael Jordan was able to average 32 points per game in a much more highly defensive era on a team that averaged 88 points per game, you can't tell me that Michael Jordan in his prime, in an era where teams routinely average more than 110 points per game in the finals, sometimes upwards of 115 points per game in the finals, with the relaxed defensive rules, centers could no longer just park in the lane and contest shots. A guy that was the most devastating slasher in the NBA in his time, in his prime, from 87 to 92, hell yeah, he would average 50 points per game. It would be easy. Kobe Bryant in his prime, he averaged 35.4 points per game in 2006. What the fuck you think he'd do now? He averaged well over 40. They would be the two best scorers and the two most dynamic scorers in the NBA, bar none, in today's NBA. Whether you like it or not, it's the truth.